if it's a normal type helicopter, you would, because they have so much vibration. You can hear them miles away.
Oh, yeah.
But the military at times may have a need to, you could have a helicopter holding a lighted platform that has intense light, and so that whatever they're needing to be doing on the ground, they can see. Okay. So that is one possibility. Now, we do hear we hear these rumors about silent helicopters, and I've never seen one. I don't know anyone who ever has, but apparently there was some kind of very highly classified type of helicopter vehicle that was involved in the assassination and recovery of bin Laden. And I think it crashed or it blew up or something, and they had to leave it. And there was a lot of concern by the U.S. government that, this craft, parts of this craft were left, with the quote unquote enemy. So there's a possibility, I'd say very, very remote possibility, that you could have a silent helicopter with a lighted platform. Okay. And that's the only thing I can think of other than, the more of a UFO type explanation.
Okay, now we're going to go for break. We'll be back in 2 minutes. And when we come back from break, I'll tell you a little bit more of the story. Then we can talk about UFOs in the 70s. Hey, everybody, tonight is a great show. Tell your friends about Night Dreams Talk Radio. You can find us at www.nightdreamstalkradio.com. We'll be back in 2 minutes. So everybody go get a cup of Java, hot cocoa, or even a beer. We'll be back.
Perde tempo escolhendo uma roupa, porque no fim eu sei que vou tirar. Fala tchau pro seu batom na boca e fala oi pra quem te faz pirar. Se você já tá com a mesma sensação, pode vir, desde que eu dou um bundão. Tá descontrolada toda essa tara e não para porque a coisa ficou mara. Vou te ganhar no cansaço, no cansaço, no cansaço. Vamos fazer um regaço, um regaço, um regaço. Colarinha dos amassos, amassos, amassos. Vamos fazer um regaço, um regaço, um regaço. Rafa Gomes, digam no beat. Não perde tempo escolhendo a roupa, porque no fim eu sei que vou tirar. Fala tchau pro seu batom na boca e fala oi pra quem te faz pirar. Se você já tá com a mesma sensação, pode vir, e eu tô um botão. Tá descontrolada toda essa tara e não para porque a coisa ficou mara. Vou te ganhar no cansaço, no cansaço, no cansaço. Vamos
You are listening to Night Dreams Talk Radio Network, from our compound to you worldwide, with your host, Gary Anderson.
Well, I am back. Got my nice cup of Jabba here for we can go on for the next half an hour. What can I say? A shout out to the truckers. We get a lot of truckers that listen to the show. Again, I want to thank you for serving our country. Without you, I wouldn't be able to have my Big Mac in the morning. Now, getting back a little bit there, Thomas, are you still here, by the way? Hey, Thomas, are you there?
Yes, I'm still here. I'm
Okay.
glad to be there. I was on mute. Sorry.
Okay. Well, I just want to tell a little bit more about what happened in that desert. Okay. I didn't think anything of what happened after I had whatever that encounter was. Then in the 90s, one of my sons gets in trouble, and I have to go to court for a year, once a month. Now, the courthouse has these metal detectors. Now, I would go through the metal detector and I would set it off. And, it got frustrating because, I didn't have anything on me to set it off. It got to a point after about 6 months of setting it off every month, they took me in that special room. And they were doing a wand and all this stuff. And they said, well, you got something right there. And I go, what do you mean? Well, it's setting an alarm off. And it was in the upper part of my back. Well, I was in the military. I injured my tailbone, but never the upper part of my back. Now, I'm going to go one step farther. I did go to my doctor, a surgeon, and I was complaining about some medical conditions. They did a complete CAT scan and MRI and all this stuff. And I'm sitting in the doctor's office, and the head nurse comes out and starts talking to me. She goes, where did you get that piece of metal embedded in your spine or next to your spine? I go, I never had any. She goes, well, did you ever have surgery there or anything? I go, no. I get in and talk to the doctor. And the doctor, the first thing he does, he starts showing me stuff. He goes, well, you got this piece of whatever it is next to your spine. And I go, well, can you remove it? And he goes, no, because if we take it out, because of the scar tissue and all this stuff, you'll be in a wheelchair. And then I started thinking, what could it be? I've never been in an accident. Anything like that could have ever happened to me. But I can honestly tell you, for a year, going to the courthouse, okay, and setting off alarms every single time, I couldn't even go into an airport and fly on a plane without being taken in the special room. The room where they make you get undressed and they put a latex glove on. And that's I got that happened to me twice, and I quit flying after that. Now, I don't know what ever happened to me, but then I started thinking, back here recently, especially after talking to Michael W. Hall, I started thinking back that time in the desert when I got out of that car and I saw that bright light and poof, it was gone. Maybe I was abducted. I don't know. But I can tell you one thing. I can't go through anything without setting an alarm off. So I don't know. So I'm only saying this because R.W. Wells wanted to know more. So that's why I'm telling everybody.
Yeah. Well, I would wonder if it's possible that you might have had missing time. Did you have any indication of that?
How do you know if you have missing time? Some of the people I've talked to that, claim they were abducted, they can't account for the time. So that few seconds when I got out of the car and I looked around at that bright light and I was trying to notice the sound, who knows how long it actually could have been? Because I sure don't. I don't know.
Have you had any odd incidents since that time?
I've had some strange things, but I've blocked it out of my mind because, unless logically you can prove to me that something is going on, I don't know.
Well, if you like, Dave, or Gary, I'm sorry, I'll get you in touch with our experiencer research team, and they have a questionnaire that you can fill out, and maybe that could help.
Yeah, why not? It's time, it just makes me, for years, when that happened, I didn't think anything of it. Me and my wife were shook up at night because the first thing we thought it was a UFO. And we drove for miles and miles. And I know my wife at the time kept looking out, through the windows, she was scared because the light intensity was so bright. But, then after that, I kind of blocked it out to, I went into the doctor and found out about this little piece of metal in my back. It just makes you wonder, how did it get there? Why am I setting alarms off? And then the only thing I can actually think about is going back to that time, going through that desert.
And how long ago was this?
1976. I remember that distinctly. I was coming from North Carolina. I took a job there for a while. I didn't like it. We moved back. I had a GTO. The speed limit was none, I think, at that time in New Mexico, or it was really high. And I was going whatever I could go with and get away with the GT, that speed. And like I said, I thought I was getting pulled over by, a police helicopter.
Sure. That was a long time ago.
Yeah.
Has anything odd occurred with your wife as a result of that you know of?
Yeah.
Or your children?
We got divorced.
Your family?
We got divorced right after that. So okay. I haven't seen her since then. And sometimes I hate to say this as a bad joke. I wish if we were abducted, they would have kept her.
Okay. Well, apparently that's not one thing that they're doing for us. So.
No, I don't know. But going now to UFOs in the 70s, what do you want to touch on that?
Well, Gary, in thinking about the MJ-12 affair, which began right around 1979, 1980, the whole sequence of events began then. I started thinking about how long, in my opinion, this has been going on. And so I started looking back into the past before the MJ-12 affair began. And I started looking at the 1970s. Now, those of us who are familiar with the UFO field know that in 1969, the U.S. Air Force essentially got out of the public UFO business. And we had the so-called scientific study of UFOs by the Condon Committee, and the Air Force's involvement in that was pretty much wrapped up publicly. In 1972, J. Allen Hynek published his book, The UFO Experience. And then in 1972 and 1973, a very odd order of events occurred with Robert Emenegger, and he and his media partner were offered footage of a UFO landing, alleged UFO landing at Holloman Air Force Base. And they went through a process of talking with people at the Pentagon, and they went up to the Pentagon and they talked with, I'm trying to get the name here, Colonel William Coleman, Air Force Public Information Officer. They got a very cold reception until they told this colonel that they had been requested to be involved with this as a result of the president's request. Now, what had happened was Emenegger and his partner had attended, I believe, a committee to elect the president, President Nixon, re-elect the president at a social function. And it was after that they had been approached with this offer of this film of this alleged UFO landing. And they went to Norton Air Force Base in San Bernardino, and they met with a man by the name of Paul Shartle, who's the audio-visual director there. Anyway, they went up to the Pentagon to get more information. They had a cold reception until they told them that they were doing this at the behest of the administration. They started to get more cooperation. Then the offer of the film was withdrawn, and they went to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and they talked with Colonel George Weinbrenner of the Foreign Technology Division. And something really odd occurred there. They were meeting with him, I believe, in his office or in a meeting room, and he talked around the subject. He talked about everything but the subject they were interested in, but then he picked up Hynek's The UFO Experience, held it up, and he told them walls have ears, and that's as far as he would go with it. So they were basically jacked around, and we saw this pattern later in the 80s as well. But they had been requested to produce a UFO documentary, and they did produce a documentary which is known as UFOs Past, Present, Future. This came out in 1974, and it also came out in 1976 and 1979 under the title UFOs, It Has Begun. And in those documentaries, which were narrated by Rod Serling, by the way, in those documentaries, they had a graphic representation of something that they said may have occurred in the past or may occur in the future, and it was a